You know?
So we get you some crazy good?
Yeah, it could work.
Actually, they have the 3M stuff here.
That's cool. That's cool stuff. I never used it, but all right. Good morning. We're learning about the laws of Kashrut. We're finishing up our chapter about the basic, principles behind, how the taste gets absorbed, in which vessels, in which manner, and we learned about yesterday about sharp foods and the standard approach to sharp foods and how they enter with pressing on a knife, on a cutting board, and you better watch out with your onions. Okay. Today there's two other halachot that we have to discuss. I see a few people that are busy, but if you'd like to join us, that'd be great. Yeah.
Should I say the bracha after I've already put on the kippah, or before I put on the kippah?
As long as you're wearing a kippah, you can say. Yeah. Either way. Amen. Amen. Great. It's nice to get new things. Titchadesh. What you say to somebody to get something new, you say Titchadesh. May you be renewed. May you be renewed. It's a blessing. May you be renewed.
Like for somebody, I heard somebody saying to me once I got the haircut.
Titchadesh. Yeah, you get something new, you say, give them a nice blessing. There's one exception, and that's funny. When someone gets new shoes, for some reason you don't say Titchadesh on new shoes. I don't know. Because it's a necessity. It's not. Although nowadays, some shoes you have an extra pair or whatever. But anyways, that's the custom. Let's go back to the laws of Kashrut. Okay? Ezra, you're with me?
Yeah.
Terrific. So what happens, these are the common questions. These are the most common questions. Okay, the onions, it happens. The nut bar nut we spoke about. When you use the wrong type of pot for parva dishes, we went through this last. Next thing is, the most classic is, you're cooking up rice. Rice is parva, but you don't really have parva pots so much. So you cook it up in a fleshach pot. And you need to stir the rice. Usually you shouldn't stir rice. It's not a good example. But it's something you need to stir. Some people do stir their rice. You stir the rice? Okay, so there we go. You put in the spoon, and you realize after you put in the spoon, it's a milchik spoon. Right? So the assumption is, of course, the simple cases is if you're cooking chicken soup and you put in a milchik spoon, that's really a problem. What if it's only rice, but it's in a fleshach pot and you're using a milchik spoon?
After 24 hours.
So let's get into it. Let's get into the details here, okay? So let's apply the principles we've learned. So the worst case scenario is everything's within 24 hours. It's a busy kitchen. Okay, you cooked up some chicken soup.
No, not chicken rice.
I know. Well, I'm going to go back to the most extreme case, and then we're going to get back to the rice at the end. Okay? Most extreme case is you're cooking up a fleshach pot, chicken soup, and now before that you made some milk sauce with dairy sauce, and you stirred it with this spoon, the same spoon. So this spoon absorbed milky taste within 24 hours. And now you put it into your pot of chicken soup, which is meaty, and it's happening right now. So what's the law? What can you tell me?
Is it more than 24 hours?
No, it's within 24 hours. Within 24 hours. So what's the law? What do you say, Ezra?
Well, within 24 hours, therefore it's not kosher because it still has a taste from the dairy things, and therefore if you're putting it in meat, it's going to mix together, and therefore it's not kosher.
That's right. That's the standard psak. Without going to Rav Melamed, might have a heter for you. Excuse me, I'll put that on silent.
A bunch of rabbis say just because you have a scientific reason that says everything, otherwise so you don't need to follow the halacha doesn't mean that you don't follow the halacha.
It's not a question of following the halacha or not. The question is whether
you can use a scientific.
You can say that the halacha doesn't apply that way to this situation. This situation is different than what the halacha is. Not saying that the halacha doesn't exist. He's saying it doesn't apply. If it was wood, so let's go with a wooden spoon, okay? Even Rabbi Melamed says a wooden spoon absorbs taste and spits out the taste within 24 hours. And you're absolutely right, Ezra, that the chicken soup is not kosher anymore because now it's going to be absorbing some milky taste. What else? What about the spoon itself? What about the pot itself?
Spoon is toast, because that's for sure wood, even with Rabbi Malone.
The spoon is absorbing...
Has absorbed the meat.
Absorbed the milk before. Now it's absorbing meat.
We have to... Actually, no, it's even worse than that.
Not kosher.
Now, and also it's absorbing the treif, because the food itself is now treif.
Right, but either way, the spoon absorbed milk taste and absorbed fleshik taste. Not kosher. You have to kasher it.
Yeah.
And the pot...
Kasher it or throw it away?
They kasher it. Kasher it. Why not?
For wood? I thought wood couldn't
You can
be
kasher. You can't. Oh, it's only earthenware cannot be kashered. Wood can be kashered. And the pot?
Yeah, we have.
Wood can be kasher?
Yes.
How
No.
do you kasher with water?
With water. Yeah, you put it in boiling hot water 3 times, or once. And what about the pot? The pot has to be kasher too, because the pot absorbed meaty taste. And through the spoon, it absorbed milky taste. So everything has to be kashered, and the food itself is not kosher. That's the classic case of a problem in the kitchen, okay? It's within 24 hours of milk, within 24 hours of meat, you mix them up, problem, okay? Well, now let's change it to rice, okay? Ezra, are you with me?
Yeah.
Now let's change it to rice. You're cooking the rice in a pot which was used for chicken soup within 24 hours. And then you put in your spoon, which was used with milk within 24 hours. What's the halacha?
The food is still kosher, but it's going to be chalavi, and the spoon needs to be toivel.
Why are you assuming that the food is chalavi? Why isn't the rice basari?
Because not bar not will consider the rice to be parve, but the spoon
Why?
being used.
Why? What do you say, Yitzchak? What do you say?
Because you make it in a hot pot, which cooked, so it's
The pot was used with meat within 24 hours.
So the meat, the fleshy taste will be.
Fleshik taste is going to enter the rice
So it must be.
within 24 hours. So it must be fleshik. Okay.
And the spoon will be a problem in this.
And the spoon, how are you having it was used with milk, and then the milky taste which is in the spoon is going to go into the rice. Surprisingly, Shulchan Aruch says the rice is kosher because, like Asher said, it's not bar not. The taste that's coming into the rice is only secondary taste, right? It went into the pot first, and then from the pot into the rice, it went into the spoon first, and then from the spoon into the rice. And so not bar not of heter, we're not talking about anything treif here, right? It's milk and meat, both are kosher substances on their own, and not bar not of hetera, is what we learned 2 days ago, is kosher.
I thought that's already evident.
Exactly. So this is b'diavad after the fact. You didn't intentionally use the spoon.
You simply said what happened. You didn't say.
It was unintentional. And then it happened after the fact. The rice remains kosher. The Ramah says no. Ramah's machmir. And why? It's not quite clear. The reason why, he says, it could be, you're getting not bar not from both sides. And you're saying, so you have secondary taste in the rice. But maybe the taste from the milk will somehow get mixed in with the taste from the meat, even without the rice, directly. And so then you have it's not secondary taste in the rice, you actually have first taste. The taste, anyways, the Ramah is machmir on such a case, and he says, don't eat the rice. Now, of course, the spoon and the pot, they have to be kashered, no matter what. Even whenever we have a mixing of tastes, even not bar not, you have to kasher the pot. If I'm not mistaken, 1 second. I'll take your question 1 second. No, the pots are kosher too. If it's if it's not barnat, you don't have to kosher either, because the milky spoon didn't actually touch the meat, and the meaty pot didn't actually get any milk on it, and so everything's kosher according to the Ramah, according to the Shulchan Aruch. According to the Ramah, or Machmer in that case, because there might be direct, because maybe your spoon did actually touch directly the pot, and so then both get not kosher. You have to kosher the pot and kosher the spoon, but the rice is kosher. According to the Ramah, you can't eat it because it's sort of like a precaution. But the Ramah says it's not kosher. But now those are the two cases. We've had two cases so far, right? The chicken soup, the actual meat, and then the spoon. Everything's within 24 hours so far. And then we had a case of rice. And this is what an example we brought of not barnat. There's a chomer of the Ramah. In such a case, there might be direct contact, and so it's not quite not barnat, but if it would be not barnat, after the fact, of course, b'diavad, it's mutar. All you have to do now to make it more kosher is to change one variable. And that is, let's say the spoon was not used within 24 hours with milk. Or, it's a milky spoon, but it's after 24 hours. Or, the pot is a fleishach pot, because you used it with fleishach, but not within 24 hours. What's the halacha in such a case? So you're cooking up rice in a fleishach pot, and you stir it with a milchik spoon. So here, for sure, everybody agrees. Even the Ramah would agree that nothing is going to happen to the rice. The rice is not getting both tastes. It's getting one of the tastes with not barnat. And we said not barnat after the fact is kosher, so the rice remains kosher. However, the spoon, according to the Ramah, has to be kashered, and the pot has to be kashered. If we're machmir like the Ramah, I want to double check if the Ramah says also this the spoon and the pot have to be kosher. Whenever you have one of the tastes mixing in with the other tastes, we don't do that. We don't use the same pots for milk and meat. So if at one point, even 100 years ago, this was Moshe's question, 1,000,000 years ago, the pot was used with meat, and then millions of years later, you put in some milk, you have to kasher the pot. If it's earthenware, you can't kasher it. But if it's any other type, you can kasher the pot. But whenever it got a mixture of milk and meat in it, even if they were not potent, you have to kasher the spoon, you have to kasher the pot. Yeah, I'll take the questions.
Okay, again, just like my question yesterday, it's a nominally stupid question. You're to love it. If I have a pot that via the archaeological record we can prove was created and used before we received the Torah.
Ooh.
Am I one to assume that the pot is, but it was already like buried and lost to history by the time that we received the Torah? May I assume that the pot is kosher?
No, I don't think so.
What if it's earthenware? Am I allowed to kosher it and use it?
No, I don't think so. We follow the rules. We follow the rules.
So these were before the rules. This predated the rules.
I understand, but so whatever was from before that was probably not kosher. They didn't do proper shechita on it. That probably was not kosher meat. There was none, but for us, we have to eat only properly shechted meat, and that was from meat which was not properly shechted. Fascinating question. Thank you, Moshe. Let's get something more practical.
What would you be doing cooking in a pot like that?
That's it.
Museum,
Of course it would be. Asher.
Asher.
What's your question?
I told you it's a stupid question.
So let's say regarding not Rama, but regarding kosher of within 24 hours of cooking with plastic pot and the this spoon, what would that rice be? Chalavi, parve, or what would that?
Parva.
Parve. Okay.
Parva. The rice remains parva.
And
If it's not within 24 hours, that whatever taste gets absorbed is not insignificant. The rice remains parva. Yeah.
And what say I cook a rice on a pot with plastic and the spoon is plastic.
Okay.
And I want to eat that rice.
Hirsch, be quiet, please.
I know
It's
that
one thing to come late, but to start conversations in the middle, which is disrupting, it's disrupting for Moshe, but doubly problematic to come in late and to start conversations which are disrupting. It's his fault, I know, but without pointing fingers, let's keep the conversations quiet so I can hear Asher. He's trying, just 2 chairs away and I can't hear him. It's something about this room that, the little conversations on the side, they're very disruptive. So let's try to keep it together. Yes, Asher, go ahead.
The pot and the spoon is basari.
Of course.
I cook rice.
Yeah.
And I want to eat the rice with halabim. Is that possible? Because the fact is the rice is part of it. Is that possible?
Not at all. The rice, you're saying if it wasn't within 24 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we discussed in the previous class of what's considered lechatchila and what's considered b'diavad. After the fact, if you weren't intending to cook the rice for a milchik meal, but you cooked it in a fleishach pot just because you intended it to eat it with meat, or you intended it to eat, or you didn't have any other options. After the fact, you're allowed to. That's even according to the Ashkenazim, you're allowed to use it with milk after the fact. Yes, that's b'diavad, not barnat. Nothing's within 24 hours, and the rice remains parva. You can eat it with milk. Yes.
But is the b'diavad on the eating together, or is the b'diavad on the cooking? Because I remember you said that you could that with that piece you could eat one sequentially, but not together. So, b'diavad, you cooked that rice that he described. You can now eat it with the other, or is it merely that if you ate both of them together, then b'diavad after the meal you discover it, and you didn't eat non-kosher?
Not after the meal, before the meal. Before the meal. Someone asked
you.
you.
You could use it as though it wasn't because of the b'diavad?
Correct. Yes. Yes. Yes, Yossi, another question.
This might be a bad question to ask, but if we apply the rule of not by not as being the food itself is okay to eat, then doesn't it negate the need for koshering a vessel at all?
It's a good question. We have a separation here. What we describe now so far, the halacha, is that there's one set of rules for what happens to the food itself, and the food itself may be kosher.
Yeah.
And we say, yet the vessels that were used are not kosher.
So then, if the food is...
How can that be? I understand the question. Yeah.
Why is it wrong to then cook again with any other kind of food?
Right, good. So the answer is that we have a rule that dishes, we try to create a separation between fleishach dishes and milchik dishes. In any dish that got mixed with the opposite taste, at any point, we have to put it through a koshering process. Even if it was after 24 hours, so clearly it didn't, have any potent taste left in it. It still has to be kashered. I have in my house, on top of the fridge, that's just where we use it, a collection of odds and forks and spoons and stuff that we noticed, we used the wrong fork and the wrong spoon, and it was, a milchik spoon for a fleishach dish or a fleishach spoon. The food 9 times out of 10 is kosher because most of the forks and spoons that we use, we assume, what did we say, that they're not ben yomo. We assume that most dishes are not ben yoman. And so the food is still kosher, but the fork or the spoon has to be kosher. So I don't do the koshering every day. We're going to talk about koshering in the next week. So we're going to have a number of sessions. We're going to get into the actual how to apply this to koshering a kitchen, and particularly koshering for Pesach is coming up too. But we don't do it every day, and it's not convenient to do it every day. So I have a holding space, a temporary place where the non-kosher spoons and forks are. And when I get around to making a koshering process, then I'll take them down and I'll make them kosher. Another question, Hirsch.
So you basically get a big vat, a big Tupperware container.
We're not talking about it now. The laws of koshering we're going to do till next week. Okay, David.
Two questions. First of all,
Sorry, were you not talking about the koshering process? You were talking about...
I'm talking about the actual, you put it into the trunk of your car and you drive to the mikveh kelim. Is that how you...
No, not at all. Mikveh, you're confusing two different...
Mikveh kelim.
Mikveh kelim. Mikveh kelim. We, last week, I believe, we talked about toveling. That's in a mikveh. that is for, any vessel which was owned by a non-Jew. When it comes into the possession of a Jew, it has to go into the mikveh kelim. We finished with those laws. And now we're talking about koshering. Now we're talking about taste, which gets imbued into the vessels, and vessels which get defined as milchik or fleishich, and that's nothing to do with the mikveh. To kosherize those, we have methods, we mentioned them in brief, we're going to discuss them in detail, putting them in fire or putting them in boiling hot water. Boiling hot water is not a mikveh. Mikveh is cooled, right? This is mikveh, and this can be done in the comfort of your own home. Wherever you have a boiling pot of water, as long as you know the rules about how to do it, you can do it yourself. Or, fire, if you can create a fire safely and to the requisite heat and so forth, you can go to someone to do it for you, but you could do it yourself.
Yeah.
And
boiling one with rachlis when it is.
Oh, perfect. So, anyways, is that clear now, Hirsch? That the mikvah is nothing to do with anything we talked about this entire week. Okay? We're talking now about the kosher taste, the koshering, the dishes. Toveling is a separate issue. Sometimes you need one and not the other. Sometimes you need both, right? If you buy a brand new vessel, doesn't get any taste of nothing non-kosher in it, you still have to put it in the mikvah. And you can have the opposite, something that belonged to a Jew the entire time, it was made by a Jew. You don't have to put it in the mikvah, but if it got not kosher taste in it, you still have to kosher it with boiling hot water or with fire. Okay, Moshe.
So hypothetically, I invite my business partner Chris over, okay? And I tell him don't bring any food, nothing. I will cook everything. I cook a kosher meal. So we're sitting at a table and we're having a meal with kosher food.
Lovely.
Just before he came over, because he was expecting gefilte fish, and he's not halakhically required to think gefilte fish is delicious in the same way that I am. He eats for himself a sandwich that is not kosher meats, and there's cheese in there and all this stuff. And there's still maybe remnants of that in his mouth. If he's using, a fork, that's fine. It's a kosher fleishik, or a kosher part of the fork.
Does taste transfer? How does taste transfer? What is one condition for taste to transfer from food into a vessel? Heat.
But your mouth
is not hot enough. Your mouth is not hot enough to cause it has to be boiling hot. Usually your mouth is not hot enough. Yes. Please, add something else.
If you have very harif, cheeseburger was very harif.
Still, we said yesterday, even harif, you need either the pressing of the knife, you need the pressure, and your teeth is not considered to be the same pressure as a knife, or you need boiling hot, medium. And the assumption is that your mouth is not boiling hot.
Harif alone don't make something. Only with a knife or with a boiling water.
Correct. Just harif, we said if you have harif and have it touch things all you want, as if you're not pushing on it or boiling it up in the
and it's the same condition
heat.
as normal, but it takes longer.
No. Harif only transfers with a knife and the pressure of a knife, pressing down or mixing with boiling water or fire, right? Okay, yeah.
So I've been taught that I know it's not the right word for kumkum, but the hot water heater. I was taught that for shop.
Urn, yeah, meicham in Hebrew, yeah.
They call them kumkum, even though it's not technically.
Meicham, it should be.
Not halakhically a kumkum.
But with the meicham, I've been taught that for Pesach we have to swap it out because there's a chance that food splattered on the outside. And
Why don't you kosher it?
Because you can't put it in water, but that may not be correct. But my question is it an issue something that's on the outside of something? So if my
That's perfect. That's exactly the next topic that I want to cover right now.
so both for that and for a blech is my question.
Great. Let's talk about that right now. I'm going to draw a pot.
I like it.
You like it? How's that?
Love
Okay, it's on fire.
Never seen
It's on top of a fire. Okay? The pot's on the fire, and the pot has a piece of chicken in it. Okay, that's a polki. Does that look okay? And we have some soup. Okay? Now the carrots. Okay, whatever it is. There's potatoes. There's lots of things in there. Okay, chicken soup. Fleischig. It's a fleischig pot. Everything's great. No problem. This happens so often that you don't want to know exactly. But maybe what you have is another fire next to it. And let's say you have another pot. Maybe it's a fry pan. Okay? And in the fry pan, you put in some milk.
Pasta. White pasta.
And you're pouring some milk into the fry pan. And you have some sauce in there. So you've got boiling hot fleischiks here and boiling hot milchiks here. No problem. As long as they keep to themselves. Problem is, what happens? We get a splash of a drop onto the side of the pot. Milk and meat is mixed. The earthquake starts. The earth opens up and swallows you inside, and you go straight down to the fiery furnaces of hell, right?
Sure.
Let's say it doesn't happen. You go to the rabbi and ask the rabbi, what do I do with my chicken soup? Is it kosher? What do I do with my pot? We just said that if you have any taste of the opposite kind imbued into your opposite taste pot, you have to kasher the pot. Yeah, what do you say?
So
David.
we have to rule it in 160, like 160.
Very good.
If there's one drop that's into the pot.
That's right.
1 to 60, it's still kosher. And here we have it outside. On the wall.
Right.
Yeah, but-
Very good. Very good.
Except
Very
I thought
good.
that-
Except
I
that.
thought that the whole pot
Yeah.
itself, you said when you were describing the other day, the volume of the pot is now milchik. So it's no longer the one it's no longer just that one drop, it's now the entire
very good.
material of
Very
the pot.
good. Very good. Right. It's a good question. It's a good question. There's a few questions of how do we relate to this in halacha. Do we consider this to be, so we have one drop here of milk. Whatever. I should make it blue, right? Because it's milk. The rest should be right within the pot. We have one drop of milk. Do we consider it to be one drop, or do we say, well, once it enters the pot, it spreads to the entire perimeter of the pot?
We talk about drops.
No, but halachically, it could enter like we said about the kchal, right? Remember the kchal? The kchal had that was the udder. The udder had some milk in it, and there was a Gemara that said that we calculate as if the entire udder is filled with milk. Maybe we should apply that halacha here, and we should look at that this drop of milk fills up the entire pot. Now, still, that's one question. Do we consider that? Do we have to consider that, or do we just say no? This drop is localized. Localized. There's milk, and maybe there's a way to pour boiling hot water on. Take kumkum. I'm going to try to draw a kumkum here. Let's draw a kumkum with a spout. Okay, and we have it's boiling hot. This is the steam coming up, okay? And you pour the water onto directly this spot. And that'll kosher that spot. Maybe that's good enough? That's question number one. Do we look at that spot locally and say we can kosher that spot locally? Or do we even need to? Because wait a minute. We have a whole pot of chicken soup here. What about the soup? Does the soup become non-kosher?
Soup's fine, I think, according to all sources that we've read.
The soup's fine. Why?
160.
There's 60 times the soup
That's
of the drop. But again, it goes back to the question, do we only look at the drop or do we look at the entire perimeter, the entire vessel, as if it's totally filled with milk now? And maybe it's not always that you have 60 amount of the soup versus depends how thick the borders of this pot are. If the borders are quite thick, maybe you don't have 60 to counter the amount of milk in there.
Well, if if you go according to Rav Melamed at the Havad, then you can say that the transfer is not as ingrained as it is as it used to be believed.
Right. We're leaving that consideration out of the picture right now for the purposes of the discussion. Let's say it's a earthenware pot. Okay, it's an earthenware pot. Everybody agrees it absorbs taste.
Then
Yeah.
absolutely, the whole thing has to be kosher.
You have to break it. You're right. Good point. We can't have the rest of the discussion about how to castrate. But there's another consideration I want to add because I'm just looking at the clock. There's another consideration. Let's say another case. The drop of milk comes and splatters. Maybe there's a difference between whether it splatters over here, like we said originally, or if it splatters over here. You see the difference? Over here, you've got all this liquid, which could make up 60 times the drop. But now, it's opposite the airspace. Let's say there's no lid on it. There's no lid on it now, but let's make it sure that there's no lid by taking this off. That'll be our graphic representation. If it's totally open above, so then maybe there's a difference whether the drop is above or below the water line. So there's a lot of calculations here. And it's quite problematic. The bottom line is that if it's fresh chicken soup, it's being boiled right now, and it's milk, which is hot, coming from your sizzling fry pan, then this pot has to be kashered. This pot can become treif.
And your chicken soup is
Your
garbage.
chicken soup is not necessarily the same halacha, because the chicken soup might have 60 times. It depends on the volume of how much soup is in there, and it depends.
But it's been in a pot that's not kosher.
So what? Doesn't matter. Even if it's been in a pot that's not kosher, the food is not necessarily not kosher. The food in most cases is going to be kosher, but the pot needs to be kashered. Let me just see if there's another specific example here.
Explain it so the food still hasn't come into contact with both cooked meat and milk for one thing. So I don't even see why you have to consider it 160. It hasn't gone into it.
Well,
It's been protected by a barrier.
if the pot gives off taste, if it's still being heated right now, so the taste is going to transfer into the food as well, right? This is all hot. This is even not barnat.
Through the walls of the pot.
Yeah, sure. If it gets absorbed in it can be released as well. The heat allows the transfer of taste, and so it really. Lemaisa, we're lenient. Lemaisa means practically, we're lenient regarding the food. The food, just to look at that one drop. That one drop, for sure you're going to have 60 times, right? What we don't have 60 times, we said, is when you have, assuming that the drop is imbued in all of the thickness of, if that were to be the case, you wouldn't have 60. But if you're just going to look at that one drop, the food is going to have more than 60 times to nullify that drop. If you have one drop of milk that falls into your chicken soup, it's kosher because there's 60 times, if there is 60 times the amount of the drop. So all we only have to think about for the food, we think about the drop. But regarding the vessel can be kashered, just spot koshered.
But isn't it the drop like getting all over?
And some people say to be careful, to worry about the milk spreading, you actually have to do a proper koshering of the entire vessel. You can't just spot kosher that spot. And it might make a difference if you're above the water line or below the water line, whether or not it's considered to be nullified or not. But the bottom line is, usually we don't do spot koshering of vessels. Once it's got a mixture of meat and milk in it, you kosher the entire vessel. But the food usually, in most cases, is considered kosher because it's more than 60 times. The food in it has more than 60 times of that one drop which went on. So the food is kosher, but you got to transfer it out into a kosher pot now and continue cooking it. If you keep cooking the same chicken soup, you just have to transfer it to another fleishich pot. Yes,
And
it's
it's unlike this is 100% good what comes over.
right. We're going to get into another
It's
time.
that's the liquid milk, but not 100%. So it's
Right,
uh,
right.
Not 100% raw already.
For that, we usually assume that if there's some milk in it, we assume that the entire thing is milky. But I want to go back to the question of the spoon also.
What about the kum? So if my
Back to your question, yeah.
The
The mei
It
cham.
sits next to the milchik sink, and occasionally a splash might get on it. I don't know that does, but it has proximity.
Mei cham. That's an urn.
Okay.
Okay, learn the words to be precise. That's the Shabbat. Usually they're pretty tall, and you got a little spout over here where you can, turn the lever and you.
Yeah, Shabbos kids.
Shabbos urn, not a kettle, an urn. This is as opposed to. Up. Okay, forgot about that. As opposed to kumkum, which is what I tried to draw on the board over here. Tried to draw it again. That's usually a pot that has a little spout here of some sort, and you got a little button on here to make it go on and off.
So thing that boils water for you?
Yeah, it's usually connected to the electricity. Okay, and that's what we usually call the kettle. Kum, kettle, kum, and urn. Anyways, your question was, what happens if you have an urn and the urn is there? It's parva. It has only boiled water in it, but then it's right near your stovetop, the sink.
Not stovetop, sink.
So
it's one level down.
yeah, sink is usually not boiling hot water. So, but it's problematic when you have splashes on top of the urn because the urn itself is boiling hot. The urn itself is boiling hot, so it's going to facilitate the transfer of the taste of that food. That's why some people say for Pesach, you have to kasher your urn. Why should I kasher? It's just water. All year round, it's just water. Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever seen that, some people use the top here to put the challah, to put the bread.
My family sometimes use it to heat up food when you eat it.
Right, sometimes it could be fleishik.
You put donuts on there. You
could put donuts, you could put lots of things on there, and it warms it up nicely, which is not a problem. But if it spills, then you're going to be getting this urn becoming either fleishiks or milchiks or chametzik or whatever it is. If you have spills on there, if obviously if you're very careful that nothing ever spills, then there's no transfer of taste. If you have a dish, if you have a very good solid dish here that you're putting things in, and nothing's going to spill out, it remains parva. But it could be problematic. Spilling on the side of an urn is just like spilling on the side of the pot, which we learned today. And if you have milchik or fleishik taste spilling on the side of your urn, it's going to become either milchik or fleishik, and you shouldn't be using it for. Now, if it's hot water, you're going to be using it for water. There's no problem. Water is parva, and obviously the taste. When you take out your cup of hot water for tea or for coffee, that's not barnat already. Not barnat times 3. Okay. So you can still use your urn. It's still kosher, unless non-kosher food went on it. You can still use your urn even if it's been spilled on. But ultimately, you shouldn't. You shouldn't have opposite tastes in the same vessel. You can have parva. You can have the urn be milchik or fleishik. Doesn't matter. But if you have both milchik and fleishik spilling on your urn should be kashered. And you can kasher an urn, and I'll show you how. B'ezrat Hashem next week. Okay? So, we'll stop here.